You, my friends, are just in time to take a shift, a revolutionary podcast hosted weekly by yours truly, Belinda and Catherine, that will literally alter the trajectory of your life.
We're on a mission to listen, ignite, and transform, challenging ourselves and you, dear listener, to journey deeper and get uncomfortable. Discover what lies beyond those layers of fear, judgment, smallness, and everything else that's been getting in your way up until now. Choose to step into new possibilities and courageously wake up to the life you know you were meant to be living.
So buckle up, Buttercup, summon your curiosity, and together, let's take a shift. Oh God, we've lost it.
Oh, it's Catherine and Belinda, and we are in a state of surrender.
Oh.
We're coming back to you after another several weeks break and a lot of introspection and reflection and riding the waves. Hello, love.
Hello, love. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those impromptu podcasts for us, just out of our own intimate conversations. But just saying the word surrender has a whole new meaning these days, in the sense of even surrendering our societal element of our lives, right? The societal element of our lives. I mean, and that's just from a personal aspect, like we were talking about. Like, I don't want to be out in public. I don't want to be in a store. I don't want to go get a pedicure. I don't want to be around people with no mask. I'm basically incensed to see people with no mask. I work in a COVID unit. You want me in a mask, and I want you in a mask because I don't know who's been around you. So, it's so funny for me, the introvert, to be clinging to solitude, right? In the sense of,
did you mean extrovert?
I mean, yeah. Did I say introvert?
You did.
That must be my new self. That's my new self. Hello, my name is Catherine. I'm the introvert. I didn't do well as an extrovert in COVID, so I became the introvert. Oh, that must have been a Freudian slip. And yes, I am like, get me back to the house, get me back to my safety. And I do not feel like I'm missing anything out there, which is really funny.
Well, and I love how we sort of gently walked our way into surrender as we were having, this one of many conversations we've had over recent months about just how to best navigate, or how to do our best in navigating this really strange and challenging time, and that each of us is having to face those challenges differently, just really based on even where we were coming from before COVID hit. And it's funny because, I was writing earlier today, and interestingly enough, I was writing about the word surrender and had looked it up in the dictionary a few weeks ago. And one of the definitions was to yield. I loved the word yield because then I kept thinking, oh, it reminds me of the word pause, which, I love that word. And there's something about pausing, about yielding to this force that is beyond any of our control, and noticing what comes up, as you were sharing, and I was sharing also, this kind of anger when we've been in public places and watched people consciously or unconsciously choosing to protect themselves and to protect others by not wearing masks. Interesting to see how we're responding and interacting with the people that we are seeing on a daily basis, our family or our coworkers. And as you were talking about, like, letting go of sort of the way we operated in society only 3 months ago, which feels like an eon ago, one of the things that's come up for me is that there is kind of a relief of not having to operate a certain way that I think so many things were maybe expected isn't the right word, but we kind of just, right, everything from bringing our kids to school and talking with parents after school and socializing and hosting and showing up at these places and going to stores to get whatever, like, not any of those were good or bad. It's just, I think a lot of those things for me were, I was kind of in a flow that wasn't necessarily a flow that I had ever really even considered, not to the degree that I've considered it in these last 3 months. And so for me, there's been actually some relief as we moved into month 3 and now moving into month 4 of quarantine, of sort of being with myself in particular and noticing this rich life, this rich internal life, that I am probably in more relationship with now than ever. And so in a way, all of these external things kind of falling by the wayside, I think for many of us, and I think we've talked about this before in past podcasts, is giving many of us an opportunity once again to reconnect to what's important, and even to recognize that our happiness and our well-being and our peace is really internal. It is not external. And so it's like this idea that everything around us could drop away and we could experience something quite profound just within. And then what?
Right. And then what? And I think the you talk about that, the flow, and when you were talking about that flow, what came to my mind is the busyness, the
Mm-hmm.
energy expenditure of the busyness of what life used to be like, as you say, eons ago, 3 months ago, in the good old days of January, February, and before we were really having to face this thing head on as it came to the US. But, the whole part of that is, we've all had to surrender the way of living life the way we used to know how to live it, right? We've all had to surrender that. One of my best friends in Charlotte, North Carolina, is still not back at work. And like, I went to I was doing a cash deposit at Bank of America the other day, and there was nobody to do it with, right? Like, because they're not there. So I'm like, well, how do I get money in the bank? I don't usually have money because I use my debit card or whatever, but I ended up with some cash. Somebody paid me something for at work, and I was like, I'm going to put that in the bank. Well, it's in my safe now, because I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with this money. There's nowhere I can get it in there. So, it was just kind of funny. I mean, you can put it in the ATM, of course, but it was kind of funny. I was like, I'm just going to drive through and place that in there. And I was like, wait, there's nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not back at work yet. And they don't know when they'll be back at work, because she works in big corporate America, and they have to social distance to get to the 21st floor. And so only 2 people at a time can ride the elevator. So by the time they got everybody to the 21st floor, it's time for lunch. And then you got to figure out how to feed them all and socially distance downtown Charlotte, right? Like, I didn't even think about that. So, we're all having to learn how to do life differently. And I really have surrendered to, like, I really want to sit with that word a lot more, because that's what I feel like that. I just came up with that word as we were talking, to what places on what I've been doing. Like, I've just now titled what I've been doing for the last couple of months, right? I've just now titled it when we talked about that. And it really settled strongly within me and resonated strongly within me. And I've also been really particular about what I let in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do go work in the COVID unit. I've seen more death since March than I've seen in my entire 55 years, especially, in the last 15 years of a medical career. And what I do when I get in the confines of my home, like, I'm very particular about what I let in, even if I'm listening to something on podcast or the TV is on. Like, I get very particular about what I'm going to allow in. And it's not like I don't have the time to allow it in, because if I'm not working, I'm at home, right? So I could do whatever. But I really realized, we were talking about last night, like I was like, what kind of feel good movies can I allow in? Because I need to have I mean, I even watched a Lifetime movie while I was sitting here in my office. I'm like, who am I? But it was one of those cheesy Hallmark Lifetime movies and I'm sitting here crying at 3 a.m. in the morning, watching it, feeling good about it, exactly what I wanted. So, the choices that you make in surrender and the attitude that you have about it, because I've really had to work on my attitude about it. Really have had to work hard for that, especially where I work. And, I think I was telling you earlier, I touched base with my mom a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, I'm not okay. I'm an extrovert. I am not okay. And I'm trying to figure out how to manage this. And she's like, well, we'll bring the motor coach and come down to and be down there with you. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to come see you because I work in the COVID unit. It would mortify me to be around you. So don't do that. But thank you. So it's just funny that, I'm really going to sit with the surrender aspect of it, because that's really what we've all been doing for the last couple of months, coming in, like you said, the fourth month, and redefining how we're going to adapt to the life that's around us now and the life that's being required of us now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that when people were talking about, is it the Spanish flu, or what was the pandemic? Yes. Spanish flu 100 years ago. I mean, they what little I understand about it, it was years before life became normal. And I wonder if we were not a bit sort of egotistical and not reflecting enough on the past when estimates, and timelines were originally stated that, by the summer, I mean, from the beginning, they were sort of like, but, even at the beginning, it was like a month, and then it was like 2 months, and then it was the summer. And then I wonder, regardless of the amount of time that we're living, like, it comes back to that question of surrender again, of like, where for many of us, myself included, this idea of like being in control of our lives is being really put into question. Like, this thing that is happening, and we're all sort of being tested as to how we're going to respond. But we cannot respond believing that we have some control over it. And I think, I don't know, for me, if I think back to the, remember when I was flying back from Texas that time, we talked about it, we're like, this needs to be a podcast sometime, where there was really bad weather. I ended up in a hotel right next to the airport with like a 5 a.m. flight the next morning. And I arrived in the hotel, and like, they were super nice, and, just everybody was super nice. And I got to my hotel room, and I was like, oh, one more night to like get things done. And I had like a 7-hour work session, and you were just like, this needs to be a podcast. Like, your flight got canceled. It's horrible weather. Your family's waiting for you. You can't get home, but then you like do 7-hour work session, and you're in like this great mood, and da-da-da-da. And I was thinking, this kind of feels like that too, of like, who's to say what this year was supposed to look like? Who's to say, like, we all had our plans, but I mean, isn't it part of surrender to sort of say, we can make plans, but we're not in control of what happens. And part of like the beauty of life is like, could be the potential beauty that we could see in life is like making our plans and having our intentions, and then releasing them and letting go. And then, when we were doing our schooling together, right, that statement, this or something better. Yep. Right? Like this or something greater. And I don't know, I think that thought and thoughts like that really have been what has carried me during this time. And I've had my ups and downs. I haven't been in a COVID unit, and I don't know anybody who died personally. I know people have been sick. And I'm hearing from you, Catherine, on a weekly basis about what's going on. So I do recognize that I'm not in the epicenter of it. And I'm probably like the majority of Americans who are still having their own experience, even if we're not on the front lines. And I think maybe that's the part that feels refreshing and freeing for me is being okay with this idea that I'm not in control. And in a way, what it's helped me to do, certainly like in the last month, I would say, is be just even a little more present and a little more available, and have a little more pleasure in the simple things, and not just being with my family, but I think with clients in particular, and having a really good attitude about doing work over Zoom, which before for years I resisted any kind
Right.
of distance work. And now it's like, oh, I could get used to this. Like, it's great. And if I can do my work on Zoom, that means I can work with people all around the world versus being in person in Portland. And it's sort of like, wow, then when I really surrender, look at what all of the opportunities and possibilities that start to show up.
Yeah, because you've always said you didn't want to work with Zoom because you wanted.
It had to be in person.
Exactly. It had to be in person and now it can't. So it isn't. And there you are, So, and the other part of that is like there is so many social viruses, if you will, that are going around right now from, George Floyd. And, one thing I want to touch on is the racism issue that's back again, that has always been, but because I'm white, I don't feel it, right? I could wear a hoodie and not get stopped, or have to have my parents have a conversation about me when I get stopped in a car, or if I'm wearing a hoodie, or, if a policeman stops me. And, we were sitting at dinner the other night, a friend of mine that I work with, and a CNN was on, and they were talking about Emmett Till. And I was like, who's Emmett Till? And she's like, you don't know Emmett Till? Do you know who Emmett Till is?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, no, who's Emmett Till? And I was like, CNN said, the 14-year-old Emmett Till. And I was like, what is that? So she was telling me about it. Well, I was just mortified. And so I got on and watched a documentary on YouTube. His mother did a documentary. I was mortified after just reading the Wikipedia part of it. And then, had the strength of his mother and his, I mean, can you imagine if in this day and time that someone comes and knocks on your door at night and pulls Cian out of the bed and you never see her? I mean, no. I mean, yeah, that's how there's nothing they could do about it. And I've been watching Hunters on Netflix. Have you watched that?
Mm-mm.
Like it's just about another sector thinking they have control over another human being, right? Whether it's Jewish or black or gay. I'm in that one. So it is just like it's almost too much to bear to be out there, in the sense. And I think there is a lot of security um, in this solitary part of surrendering and recognizing that these viruses have always been here.
Mm.
Right? Like eons of eternity go back to slavery, someone thinking they can own another human being. And I mean, humanity has been like that for the existence of humanity, I guess. If you really open that up, in the sense of, like, sometimes it just blows my mind, and it feels so much safer to be at home, where you can just be in the loving, and people don't get those choices to do that. And I was doing a meditation the other day, and I was just crying because of just all the hate in the world that I'm not even privy to, right? Like, I don't even really see it. Like, I don't experience it. And when, and Bubba, the NASCAR driver, because of course I'm from Charlotte, who has a fucking noose put in his car Sunday night. I mean, and then on Instagram, like, that just made me cry. That, he's the one that wanted the Confederate flag taken away, and then there's a noose in his car, and it was like we're no further along than we were 400 years ago. And yet, like, some of us are, some of us aren't, right?
Mm.
Like, some of the human beings on this planet are ahead. Some of us, some of the human beings are less than what we would call human beings, that look like humans that really in their heart maybe not. But and then today or yesterday on Instagram, all of NASCAR rallied behind Bubba and supported him in what had just happened to him. He found he spoke up, and then that fucking noose, which is just insane. And like, I can't even, like, I hear it, but I can't even hardly take it. And all I can do is just send love. All I can do is send out love. And I run for cover. Like I don't want to be outside anymore. Like I don't, like, I go to work and I want to come home. I'm go to work with very loving people who I love to be around, and I'm able to love these patients, and then I come home. I don't even like to be in traffic anymore. It just, like, society really scares me sometimes. And today,
There's no question that, I mean, maybe beginning with COVID, maybe beginning with Trump, maybe beginning the, I don't know when you say the beginning started, but there definitely is I think, a fragility that we're all feeling, and we're all affected differently depending on who we are and what, I think, where we stand in our society. And I think the socioeconomic fragility that has happened. I mean, I just can't believe I live in downtown Portland, and the number of places that are closed, and I think so many of them are closed permanently. Like, there's just no coming back from where they were. And every day I get some message from some place, the 2 yoga places that I've been to in Portland, now they're closing down, and they're adapting. They're going on Zoom, and I think they're doing some online classes and all of this. But there again, this word surrender for me is just so, it's a powerful one, that if you think about it again from a point of view of it's yielding, I feel like part of what we've quieted down a lot of the noise so we could hear truth. And I think when we say truth, it's not like the truth, but different people's truths and different people's realities. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's coming up to the surface that's super uncomfortable for people. And I think that with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that's happened in recent weeks, I think it's uncomfortable, and there's been so much, it's been so present in a way, because we don't have a lot of the distractions that would have enabled many of us to be distracted by it and not take a look at it and not be confronted with it and not face it. And for that, I'm grateful, right? Even if it's just sitting and simply watching the YouTube videos and getting more educated and reading the books. And there's a big dialogue at my kids' school, right? That was toward the end of their school. And we've still gotten stuff from school about reading and educating ourselves more and having conversations with the kids. And since we do live in downtown Portland, it feels like we've been in the epicenter. The protests that have occurred are 2 blocks from our house. So if we haven't physically seen them because we've been out taking a walk, we've heard them, and we've heard helicopters overhead, and sort of like, and just being able to sit and talk about that energy, and that uncomfortable energy of things swarming around us, and wondering what is our role to participate in all of this. And I think, as you say, what you feel you can do is pray. And I pray, meditate, send love. I do think that that's a big part of it. It's literally like, perhaps the biggest part is the mindset and the heart set changes of people on the planet. Right. I mean, you get enough people to shift their mind, to just have consciousness and to say, this is not okay, then I don't know that we would have to do very much differently, because the paradigm would change overnight. Right. So there is something to be said about that. And then I think it's for each of us to take correct action. I think in the work that you do and in the work that I do, we have made it our life's mission to have impact in a way that we feel is bringing love and peace to the planet on a daily basis. I mean, just in when we show up to the work that we do and the people that we work with. So maybe there's more to be done, but I know for me, I feel like particularly in these recent months when conflict feels so much, I mean, it's always present, as you say, like these
Right.
conflicts, these viruses, they have been present. Um, I would simply say for me, and I think for you in the COVID unit, we've had more opportunity in recent months to have it in our face and to rise to the occasion of meeting it, right, with love and gentleness and kindness, and love and gentleness and kindness for ourselves as we're going through it.
Right. And what was so brilliant was like it just felt like all of NASCAR, which is quote unquote, could be looked at as the good old boys network, right? Like what was that show back? um I don't know. Can't remember that show. It had a red race car. It was on Friday nights. I can't remember it now.
Dukes of Hazzard.
Dukes of Hazzard, the good old boys. And I grew up around the Richard Petty, Kyle Petty, like they were in Randleman, North Carolina. My grandmother worked with his Richard Petty's mother, so we were around. That's where Richard Petty was from, and Kyle Petty,
Didn't
and
you
we.
want to be a NASCAR driver?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a race car
That's
driver.
what I
I'm from
thought.
Charlotte, yeah. And what was just so lovely was, Bubba Hap found his voice to say what he wanted to say about the Confederate flag, and then that horrible event, and then to see all of what came out of the support that came from it, right? Like you cannot even read Wikipedia and then especially see the recount of Emmett Till on YouTube, the hour documentary his mother did. Um, and there could be no place in your human existence, in my eyes, that any of that one little part of it could be okay. Like there's just they have anybody around me said, well, he deserved it, or anything open into any part of that being, from her lying and about him coming in the store to everything that happened. Like, you just would not be a human being. But they're here. Evidently, they're here. And they're still here. It's the virus. That's the virus, right? Our thought process can be the virus.
Mm.
Right? The way we think, the way we view things, that's the virus. I'm not going to be at a rally because I'm not going to be around people. I work in the damn COVID unit. I'm not going to be around that many people, even with my mask on. And we saw so many, we haven't even hit that wave of the riots that were in Dallas without the mask, and a lot of, thankfully, the protests that we did see did have masks. So we're grateful for that. But I don't know. I remember when we were at USM and Ron and Mary were talking about there are enlightened people around the world that are in secluded places that are holding space for the rest of the world and in prayer, right? Like these enlightened beings that basically chose seclusion to get out of the distractions or whatever it may be, in order to add to that vibration on the planet through prayer and love. Mm-hmm. And so I thought about that, and like when I was doing that meditation the other day, and just really sobbing, like there's been a lot of like gut wrenching sobbing going on for the last month for me, ever since George Floyd had that knee on his, and I can't breathe. And then I can't breathe is such significance for me because that's what I see in the COVID unit. Like before we intubate them, they cannot breathe. They just are suffocating literally to death. And that virus is so rampant in so many different ways with so many different titles. And so, I know we were talking about surrender, but that has really come up for me. And it's been around since the beginning of time. And how, I mean, we're still where we are, or not where we are. So I have to surrender to that too, in a sense, because I can't go out there and change it today or tomorrow. All I can do is love. And as God says, you even have to love your enemies. Like, I don't know that I could love the person that put that noose in Bubba's car. Like, I really have to question myself about that. Could I love the people that did that to Emmett Till? No. I watched him on the documentary. I hated him on the documentary from 1950s.
Mm.
So that's something that I have to look at too, because that's hate propagating more hate, right? Even though I think I'm in the right to hate that kind of, I don't know, it opens a whole Pandora's box of love, hate.
Well, and I mean, and how it can switch on and off in a matter of a second. I have seen in different places, probably on Facebook more than any place, because I don't really use many other forms of social media. When I have gone on there, I have noticed that there have been people sort of helping me to stay aware of what narrative it is that I'm listening to. So, and I've seen a lot of people leaving Facebook because of the algorithms and how they are being, it seems, manipulated. If you talk to one person, to another person, to another person, as to what they're seeing, we're not all seeing the same thing, right? And I don't know what the grand plan is or what the scheme is right behind any of it. But if I look for the beautiful stories and sort of the stories that are restoring faith in humanity, and there are so many, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say there are more of those stories than the awful ones. That the stories that as soon as people start waking up, as soon as people recognize, as soon as people are given an opportunity to do the right thing, people are amongst some bad actors, right? And I think that for me at least, it's important to remember, like, I want to be knowledgeable about everything that is going out. It's not like I want to pretend and close my eyes, but I also want to make sure that that doesn't become my reality, because as you say, like, it's sort of like what we focus on grows, where we put our
Right.
attention. If we're talking about equality, or maybe there's equity, maybe there's a different word for it now, where it's simply that every human being gets to be treated like a human being. And how do we define that on a global scale so that there is a measurement when any human being is not being treated that way? And there are people around the world who have been having to fight, as you say, for hundreds, if not thousands of years, just to be treated like a human.
Like a human.
And as you say, then there's narratives like all the NASCAR people coming together, and that's more powerful to me than the one bad actor who did that one bad act, which is terrible. And I guess for me, it's not that I don't want to see it. It's not that I don't think that person should be held accountable, but I don't want to focus on it too much, because I want to focus on the love that showed up. And we can't say why things happen. And I know lots of people don't like to hear, everything happens for a reason. And maybe it's just too pithy and it doesn't feel authentic when we say something like that. All I know is that when I can go to that place and think, for what is this happening? For what is this opening up? I mean, even COVID, from day one, you and I have been talking about this, and through the ups and downs and the roller coasters that we've experienced, and the range of emotions and the death and the sickness and everything else, we keep asking these questions, and we keep, every single time we can come up with an answer, at least one, if not many, as to what we're learning and how we're growing and how consciousness is being raised on the planet. And what do they say? It's darkest before the dawn. There's so much movement. There's so much energy being moved right now. I don't know. I think it's partly a scary time, because it just feels like we are more vulnerable. Maybe we were always this vulnerable and we were just pretending and we're making ourselves think we weren't that vulnerable. but there's a vulnerability which I think at its best produces a humility, and I think that humankind being a little bit more humble, surrendering, right, being a little bit more conscious of how we're behaving with each other and how we're behaving with the planet, it couldn't come soon enough. And if this is the form in which it came, so be it.
Well, we said it was a humanity. We've said from the beginning that we both felt like this was a humanity reset. And going back to your point, the one person that put the noose in the car did not outshine the entire NASCAR team that pushed his car, right? Like the entire, I mean, he took the selfie with the entire team of NASCAR behind him. So that one person didn't gain any, I mean, that one act, like, right, the act of that noose going in did not outweigh the beauty of the love that was shown to support him the day after. Mm-hmm. Right. So you're right. I mean, it's just about, I mean, it all comes down. Listen, there's a sign on my locker at work and it says love heals all. And you know, I've always, even at Caroline's funeral, I said, if love could have healed you, you would have never, if love could have saved you, you would have never known one day of despair or disappointment or depression. And love could not save her in the sense of what she could take on, but it's our own self-love that saves us and heals us.
And it's a leap of faith. I mean, it's a leap of faith. In any given moment, people could poo-poo that idea and think it's ridiculous, but you implement it and you live from that place, and then you start seeing miracles. You're not going to argue with it. Right. And you're going to keep choosing that. And now it's like the challenge is, as the days turn into weeks, turn into months, and potentially years, like, are we going to keep choosing that? Or are we going to turn in against ourselves and each other? Because of fear and uncertainty and sustained instability. And this is where, we have to look to ourselves, but we also have to look to leaders, and we have to look to who we want to be as a people. And each of us individually, you know, I mean, this is the whole podcast, I feel like, is about this. Like, what are we individually choosing? What's the impact it's making? What are the shifts that we're willing to make within ourselves to see the outside world change, right? It's not going to change because we go and we impose on it. It's going to change because we do something within ourselves to expand, right? Expand our hearts. You know, you keep saying life is about expansion, right? We use the word consciousness a lot, but expansion. How much love, how much capacity do I have for both love and discomfort? How much capacity can I grow in this time of uncertainty, so that even if this lasted for 2 years, it could be wonderful, because I choose that and I sit with the discomfort of it, and then I'm in the comfort, and then I move back into the discomfort, and right. But it's this, that's how we expand, right? Moving from what is our comfort zone and that safe space into that uncertain territory. Then we feel a little more comfortable there, and then we move into new territory, right? And that is the expansion process. So, and there is surrender all in there. Surrendering, you know, like, it's going to be okay. We're going to feel fear. We're going to do it anyway. We're going to live by our value system and reevaluate that as time goes on to make sure that we're feeling aligned with that continuously. But all of this is, you know, it's all inner work to do. And I don't know, for me, you know, interestingly, I wanted to before we end today, share a quote from the Dalai Lama, who's my hero, my personal, my teacher. The first time I did a vision board, like a real one that I felt like was one that I have kept it. It's actually 9 years. It's on my wall, and it has the Dalai Lama actually in the corner. And it says on there, cultivate an open heart. And yesterday, looking at Facebook briefly, the Dalai Lama showed up in my Facebook, which feels so cool. I just follow him.
Oh.
And he says, I'm 85 and physically very healthy. I feel this is because my mind is peaceful as a result of my cultivating altruism. My favorite prayer says, for as long as space endures and for as long as living beings remain, until then may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world. And in trying to fulfill that aspiration, I feel my life has been of some benefit.
Wow.
And I've been thinking about that for 24 hours of just like, we each do it in our own way. We each do it in our own way. And we get up every day, and if we keep doing it, then what could the world be?
I love the word endure. It's akin to endear. You know what I mean? Like, and it comes back to like, I think it may be on both of our bookshelves on our Take a Shift Now on our homepage, but Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment. Maybe I need to go back and listen to that again.
Me too.
Maybe I need to go back. I mean, because that book
a little refresher.
Right. That book's been around, 10, 15 years now? I mean, maybe 10 years? I don't know. I mean, it was part of our curriculum at USM. So I think that would be a good place for me. Endure, endear. You know, it is so funny. Like, I still have these 2 words that we started with in January when we were on fire and everything was our oyster and everything was open and we were going to travel once a month or every 6 weeks. And it was about reorientation and reorganization. I mean, my gosh, how have we reorganized and reorientated all of us in each aspect of our world, right? Like, we've surrendered, and you may not even call it that, but that's we're in the process of.
Indeed.
Indeed. So I think I'm going to go back to Michael Singer's book, and I'll do a little refresher course in that.
Sounds good.
Maybe I'll even pray for the person that put the noose in Bubba's car.
Yeah,
right?
On that note, there was a video. If I can find it again, I will send you the link. But there was a video, and it was, I want to say, I don't want to say it was like a white supremacist rally, but definitely there were sentiments of white supremacy being spoken at this rally. And there was an African American man that one of the hosts of this event allowed to come on stage. He must have been part of a protesting group. And he shared something about simply like this message we've been talking about, like, can we treat each other as human beings? Can there be a spaciousness for us to let each other live? And it was listened to, and people responded really well. And afterwards, you see some video of one of the leaders of the rally and this protester like talking and even hugging. And while they didn't agree, and they both said we don't agree on everything, there was this opening of their willingness to have listened to each other, which was pretty miraculous. Yeah. And I hope it's authentic, because when you're watching things on YouTube and places now sometimes, but it seemed very authentic to me. And yeah, I think, what are we focusing our attention on? What's the narrative we want to listen to? And to keep hoping. I mean, my gosh, if these protests and rallies around the world, it's not just the US, right? It's around the world. They say something, and the whole world wants something to change. And I think, are they rallying for the people who have died, at the hands of police officers in the US? Like, maybe, but I sort of feel like when I see that, I just think we're rallying for all of our lives. We're rallying for life on the planet, and we're recognizing that there's this movement to destroy life on the planet as opposed to uphold life on the planet. And I find that very reassuring.
Right. Like, the Human Rights Campaign, like, all humans with rights, gay, Jew, Black, whatever, all humans have these rights, own these rights. You have the right. So I think there's going to be a lot like this just kind of yummy, right? In the sense of this is really yummy underneath a lot of blah, in the sense of we talk about racism and COVID and death, and there's this yumminess underneath it, and this hope, this pervasive hope of like, as we've pulled back the veil of the busyness and we have to sit with it. I remember being in Maui years ago when the guy goes, oh, you'll either like Maui or you won't, because at 9:00 everything closes and goes dark. And if you can't sit with yourself, you can't be here. He goes, and those are the people that can heal. So they have to leave and go somewhere that's got nightlife. They, have to have that constant distraction. I'll never forget him saying that. And because I was like, there's an energy here that I love. And he goes, oh, you get it. You can be with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're all learning how to be with ourselves, and some of that ugliness is coming out, and some of that beauty's coming out. A lot of that love's coming out, and around, like you say, around the world for,
I love it.
Yeah, a human right, the human right. Ah, okay. Now I'm going to go sit with this and write with this after we get done with this. So, yeah, because it's all about the surrender.
Yeah, so good to be with you again, and surrender to the idea that we were supposed to be podcasting every single week and we have not, and recognizing that we are doing our best and feeling what we need to feel, and giving ourselves really the compassion and the space.
Yeah. Because it's a lot of shock that we've all been under, right? Yeah. We're all shocked into this way of being. First it felt a little forced, and then we're shocked, and then we're like, okay, so we adapt.
That's right. So to all of our listeners near and far, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much, Catherine, for being here with me and this beautiful conversation. If you all want to be in touch with us, you can always find us at www.takeashiftnow.com. We hope you enjoyed today, and we're sending you love. We're sending each other love. I send you love, Catherine.
I send you lots of love.
And we'll see you always.
Thank you.
Thank you. See everybody soon. Hear you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Take a Shift, a part of Mental Health News Radio Network. We are so grateful for your time and presence. Always remember, you're just one shift away from a better feeling day in your life. Until next time, remember to listen, ignite, and transform. Much love from us to you.